excitable Adam, as always, and we are live. And you can expect more of these lives as as time goes on, really. As it just kind of makes sense to do things during the day sometimes, as the evenings become less and less free. So what are we talking about today? Well, the subject of choice is zombies. Now, zombies are something which, everyone is familiar with. Everyone knows what a zombie is. Everyone knows what the concept of a zombie is. And probably most people have seen a zombie movie in their time, or at least, are aware of zombies. But yeah, before we get into that, let's talk about the things I normally chat about briefly, because there's not really much to update you with. So, with regards to things I'm painting, guess what, guys? Nothing has been painted. I have a ton of things to paint, and nothing has been painted. And I've been playing Marvel Zombies recently, and I've been very tempted to start painting those things. But at the same time, I've also been very, scared of painting them, because they're very nice looking kind of like miniatures. And I'm an okay painter, but I'm just kind of worried I'm going to ruin the miniatures with my painting skills. So I've not started any of them yet. Still got a bunch of Skulltail stuff to do. Literally nothing has moved on since I last spoke last Wednesday. Painting has not been on the agenda. Lots of personal life things going on in a good way. So thankfully it's not a bad reason I haven't been painting. It's because I've just been too busy enjoying life and what it has to give me and offer me, which is plenty at the moment. So nothing painted. Anything backed on Kickstarter? Nothing backed on Kickstarter, I'm afraid. Although there's a few Kickstarters out there which I'm intrigued by. There's a new Planet of the Apes board game, which is on GameFound, I think. And I think it's set between the second and third movie, or the second and third movie. I don't really know much about it. There is already Planet of the Apes board games out there, but I don't think they're based on the newer kind of reboot franchise. I think it's the original. Every time I think of Planet of the Apes, of course I think of The Simpsons. Get your paws off me, you dirty ape! He can talk, he can talk, he can talk, he can talk, I can sing! That's what happens. So I doubt they've got that in the board game, which is a shame, really. So the Planet of the Apes board game, that looks intriguing. There is a new game out on Kickstarter. There's quite a few out there on Kickstarter, which I'm really intrigued by, but I haven't got any concrete information to tell you about, guys, about these things, because I've just not really been focusing too much on Kickstarter. I've been focusing on other areas of the board game community. Nothing to back, I'm afraid, that I can go and back this, apart from the things I normally tell you about. What have I been playing? Well, I've been playing a few things recently. So the aforementioned Marvel Zombies and Marvel Zombies X-Men Resistance, which I'll cover off as we are talking about zombies today. But what I find kind of interesting about those is they're very different games in good ways and bad ways. So I'll go through to that. What else have I been playing? I have been playing... What did I play? Yes. I was thinking, what did I play with my kids last night? I played nothing. They wanted to watch a film. I was playing Cormac McCart on the Other Side of Midnight by Troy Skellion Games. I've played it before, but I teamed up with Paul Rose, who's the designer of the game, and we sat down and we did a remote kind of gameplay. So he's got a setup where basically he's got a camera facing a board, and I'm basically just rolling dice on my side and telling him what I want the characters to do. This is a really fun narrative adventure game, and I did a video previously saying back this game if you're after a fun solo kind of dungeon crawler. There is a 2-player in there, but I've not played that, so I can't really comment on that. But the single player is fantastic fun. And what was interesting, I played the same level as I played last time, and it's a tutorial level, just giving you an idea of the mechanics, because board games these days have a lot of mechanics, and they like to kind of break you in gently with the rule set, which I always appreciate, rather than you going into a first level and it's like, oh, you have to remember 80 pages of a rule book and know all these different things. I much prefer it when they're like, let's start with the tutorial level, teach you the basic kind of concepts, and then you go into the more interesting things. So what I found interesting about this tutorial level for this particular game was the fact that the first time I played it and the second time, very different outcomes. Even though it's essentially the same level and the same options and stuff, I did some different things this time around, and learnt some more things I didn't know the first time around. So there's definitely some like replayability even on that tutorial level, which I think is pretty cool. Deeply regretting not getting myself a drink for this, but hey, here we are. We're already started, and it's live. So let's talk about zombies, and I have a pad of paper here, not full of zombie stuff, but just some little prompts here to talk about zombies. So why am I talking about zombies today? Well, I was trying to think of a subject I could kind of cover off on the channel, and zombies is something that is close to my brain. I would say heart, but you know, they're after brains. A while ago on the channel, we did a King of the Zombies little event. Now, this is back when there was me and a couple of other guys doing the channel. Nowadays, it's mainly me doing this. And it was an idea that I had whereby we could basically do a kind of bit of narrative and kind of link together our kind of videos. And the idea was there was a zombie apocalypse going on outside, and yeah, I'd been bitten, and during the different videos, the intro and outro, you see me getting like worse and worse as it went on. However, people didn't really buy into it from our side, so literally me just trying to make the concept work. And it was when it's just one person doing it, it doesn't really work. So the King of the Zombies we did a while ago, it had a good idea, but it was poorly executed, I think. So yeah, so that's a bit of a shame. But maybe I'll be doing some more interesting videos on the channel where we've got a bit more fun kind of put into it, rather than just me, you know, doing solo gameplay of things. Because I think some of the more fun things I've done, or the most fun I've had with this channel, is when we've done like little intro outros with a bit of narrative in there, or you know, we're just trying to be a bit silly with it. So yeah, maybe we'll do some more of that. If you've watched any of our content and you enjoy that kind of stuff, let me know in the comments below. If you think it's terrible, let me know in the comments below. But let me know in the comments below. Zombies! Exclamation mark! Exclamation mark! Exclamation mark! Also has a very close place to my heart. So Zombies! Exclamation mark! Exclamation mark! Exclamation mark! Is a board game by Twilight Creations, which when I was in my early 20s, I was living in a place called Worcester, and they had got a kind of nerdy shop there, and it had some board games in there, and one board game stood out for me, and that was Zombies. I'm not going to keep saying exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. That's the game I'm talking about. So I'd seen this game and I thought, this looks interesting. And before that, I think the last board game I'd probably played would have been something like Risk. So I have a background that, you know, whereby my family were very into board games, and we had my dad had a ton of different types of board games. Everyone else in my classes at school would have stuff like, they'd have Monopoly or Cluedo or, you know, maybe Risk or Scrabble. But, you know, I'd have some really interesting games like Awful, Green Things from Outer Space, what else there? Valley of the Four Winds, just loads of different board games which they'd never heard of. So I kind of come from a background of playing all these different kind of board games, and like I say, 20-something, wanted something to do, and found this Zombies game, and I was like, what's this? And it was a competitive game where you're essentially trying to survive and get to a helicopter before anybody else gets to the helicopter. So it's still a competitive game, and at this point I've not played any cooperative games. They're all competitive games. And yeah, Zombies, lovely artwork, really simple gameplay. You're rolling dice to kill zombies, moving around in tiles and screwing each other over by using cards to attack each other. It's a game that has had a gazillion different expansions for it. Adding new kind of tiles, so the tiles being the little town that you're building as you're going along. Adding new different types of zombies, so you get zombie dogs and like super zombies from the military base. And yeah, it's gone through so many, I think there's at least 10 expansions for the base game, at least. And then they had a spin-off where you played zombies eating humans, and I think it was called Humans, and another spin-off where you were like Martians or something. But yeah, really fun game, very hard to come by these days. And I actually found my original copy of Zombies when I was going through my garage, and found it in a bag. I don't think I have all the cards for it. I don't think I could actually play that game. So I was looking for a version of it that exists out there, and it's very hard to come by. First hand, at least, you can probably find second hand. But yeah, Zombies, great fun, and I think it still has a place on the tabletop today, even though it's like quite an old game. There's nothing, I don't know, it's quite fun just going up against other people and just it's what some people call a beer and pretzel game. One where you just it doesn't. There's not much narrative to it. You're just enjoying sitting at a table with other people. A bit of take that, like not the band, unless you're playing with Gary Barlow. But he's a horrible cheater at board games. That's a well-known fact. But yeah, so take that mechanism where you're like, right, well, I've got this card. You're doing well. Screw you. Or I've got this card. You're not doing so well. Screw you. Or I'm a bit of an idiot and I hate everyone. Screw everyone. So yeah, Zombies, fantastic game. So yeah, when I was thinking of a subject to talk about today, I thought Zombies is a good subject. We've covered it before. I like talking about zombies because zombies are great. So already spoke about one board game. Let's talk about zombies in general. So zombies are interesting because they always capture the imagination, for me at least. I always enjoyed horror as a young child. And I was a kid of the 90s, 80s, 90s, so I was watching all these films that probably shouldn't be allowed to watch. And I remember when kind of cable was a thing, staying up and watching loads of different films on Bravo, which were way above my age range, but I loved them, and it probably walked me into the person you see before you right now. So yeah, zombies, I've always enjoyed it. I've always enjoyed the kind of, I think they're one of the scariest concepts of monsters. Like vampires, I feel there's something sexy about vampires. Like, you can get turned into a vampire and you still retain a sense of yourself and you kind of, live your best life, I guess. Whereas a zombie, that's it. That's the end of you. That's the end of civilization as you know it. One person gets bitten, depending on, what law we're going by. But generally, one person gets bitten, they infect someone else, and it goes and it goes and it goes and it goes. One of the scariest things about Aliens, the movie franchise, is the aliens are xenomorphs. They infect you when you are, turned into this new creature. I mean, you're not turned into it, you're killed and the creature comes out of you. But anything where you've got these kind of creatures that can basically just take over by killing you and replacing you with stuff. And zombies also, the fact you've got, loved ones, people who you knew are now these like mindless killers, is a pretty scary concept. And that's why I think like zombie kind of movies in general do so well, mostly because they prey on the kind of fear at the time. So Night of the Living Dead, as far as I'm aware, was about communism, and trying to kind of like shine a light on that, I guess. Consumerism in Day of the Dead. Stop me if I'm wrong, by the way. And the later zombie films are about viral stuff. Cell, that being about mobile phones and that kind of communication. It's just quite interesting. Zombies are always something that are just always in the collective kind of id, something that people are aware of and scared by. And whenever I do think of the scariest situation that could happen, zombies is it, because there's it's not a kind of a case of, oh well, we'll kill them and we'll get it done with. It's like, well, no, that's it now. This is the world has ended, we are screwed, and you just got to kind of live out the best life with the time you got left. And as a teenager, I always thought, yeah, zombie apocalypse, I wouldn't probably do pretty well there. I'd be the coward. I used to do a blog and I wrote a whole story about me and my friends and how I was a cowardly character in it, which was quite amusing. But yeah, I wouldn't fare very well in a zombie apocalypse. But I always wondered, how would that be? And until I had kids, I was like, yeah, that's definitely something I'd like to, I've got a plan for. As soon as kids come to the mix, you're like, no, God, no, gosh, no. And when I used to write short movies and things like that, I wrote a pretty cool pre-Walking Dead kind of story, which was basically Walking Dead. And then I saw they did The Walking Dead. I was like, well, there's no point in my story anymore. Let's put that in a drawer and never talk about it ever again. But yeah, so zombies in general, something everyone can get on board with. And even kids, you can ask them what a zombie is and they'll kind of know. So, zombies and board games. There are a ton of zombie board games. Like the zombies themselves, they just keep coming. I kind of feel with board games there are two themes which just get plastered on games. You can have a particular game, let's say, I don't know. Now I'm struggling to think of a game. Flick 'em Up. Flick 'em Up is a Western game where you play little cowboys and you're flicking around bullets at people. It's a dexterity game. It's pretty fun stuff. They slap zombies on there. Same game, but with zombies. So zombies and Cthulhu, these are two themes people will just slap on games and just change the kind of the skin of it. So same mechanics, might change some bits, but essentially it's the same game but with zombies or with Cthulhu. And those are the two things which people generally, really focus on doing. So there are a ton of zombie games out there. And some of them are great, some of them not so good. Some of them are literally just a retheme, a reskin, like the Dead of Winter version of aforementioned Flick 'em Up. But some of them are very good, and some of them they've put a lot of effort into trying to do a good zombie simulation. And some of these games are the laws different in zombie stuff. Sometimes zombie stuff you've got fast zombies, sometimes you've got slow zombies, sometimes you've got ghouls. But yeah, they all do things a little differently. And why are zombies popular? I think zombie games are popular because, like I say, it's just a general thing anyone can get on board with. Everyone knows what a zombie is and what the general premise of them are. So they're quite easy to understand the concept of them. Let's go and talk about, on my little piece of paper here, what makes a good zombie game. So, for me, it's three things really. First one is horror. You've got to be scared of zombies, in my mind. Zombie films, for me, are the best ones, are ones where you're scared of them. My favourite being is a film called Wreck, which is a Spanish film, and they're kind of possessed zombies. They're essentially zombies, but they're possessed people in it, but they're basically zombies. That's one of the scariest films I've ever seen. I absolutely love it. Aloha. Thanks for popping in. So some scary stuff has got to be in a board game. I absolutely love horror in a zombie board game, and horror is something very hard to kind of simulate in a board game. Video games are fantastic for horror because you are immersed in that. If you are alone in a house, lights are off, you've got a headset on, you've got a big screen, or maybe even a VR headset, and you are playing a zombie video game or a horror video game, then they can be truly terrifying. I wouldn't play a VR horror game because I've seen too much sci-fi where you couldn't get out of it. But man alive, the horror in video games especially, very immersive. If you go to cinema, as long as you're with the right kind of people, that can be really immersive too. Watching a horror film at home on your own, very immersive. But board games, trying to get horror in them, very hard. You can get anxiety out of board games. You can put dread in them. But getting something truly horrific in a board game is nigh impossible. The closest I've really seen to horror in board games, which has been done well, is probably Dead of Winter. Only because there is a particular mechanic in it, which I've explained on previous ones, but we are going to be talking about Dead of Winter in this, so I will explain it again. So in Dead of Winter, you are playing as survivors of a zombie apocalypse. You are trying to kind of keep this colony going, and you have to go and visit different locations to get resources, find other survivors, and try to resolve what horrible event is happening for this kind of round or this week or whatever the time frame is. So maybe you need to get more fuel for the camp, otherwise people are going to start freezing to death. So you send your guys out, and you start off with 2 survivors. You send one of your survivors out to one of these locations, and every time you move, you have to roll this dice. It's a D12, I think, 12-sided dice. And on that, you could get injured, you could get frostbite, and one of the sides on there is a tooth. And this tooth, if you roll it, what happens is basically your character is dead. They've become zombified. Now, if they just moved to a location where there's no one at, that's it. They just go in there, they turn into a zombie, end of turn. And you hopefully have another survivor you can play with. If, however, another survivor is at that location, then they also get bit. And you have a choice. You can either just kill that character off, or you can roll the dice, and hopefully, I will talk about Deep Madness. Hopefully, you can roll a blank on there. If you roll a blank, you're fine. Any other symbols, you also die, and if there's anyone else at that location, they get bitten, and it does not end well. So yeah, so that's probably the best element of horror I've seen in a board game, because you are genuinely terrified of rolling that tooth thing, especially if you move someone back to the outpost and there's like, 8 characters in the outpost, you roll that, and then you have this cascade of, of people turning into zombies. And every time somebody dies in this game, your morale goes down, and people end up just, well, it just doesn't go well. So Deep Madness was a game, thanks for shouting that out in the comments. Deep Madness, really fantastic idea for a game where you are, it's like an underwater facility, and they've opened up some gates to another world, and yeah, it's all gone a bit Cthulhu, a bit wrong. And you're going through in areas of flooding. The scariest thing about that game is the difficulty. It is ridiculously hard. I have played that very first level about, I don't know, 5 or 6 times and never won. Never won. Even when my brother changed the rules so it was easier, using all the additional Kickstarter stuff that made it an easier level, I have never won that scenario. We'd love to run that on the channel. I know my friend Just Jack, he has got a copy of it, so maybe we can run that on the channel at some point. 32 times. Well done, Paul, you dirty bastard. Yeah, I've never completed it, so well done to you. Better man than I. Horror in board games as well. Like I say, very hard to do. Some games have some good elements of it, or they implement it in the mechanics in some way. Dead of Winter, I think, is a good example. Horror done right. A game up here called Lobotomy, that had some really interesting ideas about... well, you weren't there for the 33rd time, never mind. 32 times is enough, though, to be fair. Lobotomy is pretty cool, because in that game, you are essentially... patients at like a mental asylum. Mental asylum, is that the correct term? Insane asylum. That's what I was trying to say. So you can't actually believe if the monsters you're fighting are actual monsters, or if you're just insane and these are regular orderlies and you've had a psychotic break and you're just murdering people. It's a really interesting kind of concept that it didn't really fully kind of explore enough in that base game, in the Lobotomy 1, but they did a Lobotomy 2, and I don't know if that's any better. I'd love to play it, so watch this space. So, going back, horror is one of the 3 things I think you should put in a zombie board game. The second thing you should put in there is infection. So a lot of zombie board games, when you get bitten, your character is like immune to the zombie virus, so you're like, I take some damage, and then when your character dies, you're out of the game or whatever. Or, there's a morale loss or something like that. But I much prefer, one of the best things about zombies is the fact they infect you. You become what you fear the most, these mindless killers. So if you have infection in your game, like the aforementioned Dead of Winter, then yeah, that's fantastic. I absolutely love that. That will, if I was designing a zombie board game, I'd definitely have an infection in there. Somebody dies, you replace them with a zombie, that kind of thing. Finally, the third thing I would say for a zombie board game is hopelessness. You need to have a general kind of like feeling of dread and, this isn't going to end well. And hopelessness, I think, is exactly what you need to kind of drive into your board game. Once again, Dead of Winter, which you'll probably guess is one of my favourite zombie board games from what I'm saying here, because it has all 3 of these kind of things in there, I guess. Yeah, you've got that kind of hopelessness. It does feel very bleak. But it's tricky when you've got hopelessness in a board game, because you need to get it to a level where actually it's enjoyable. Dead of Winter is a game where it's kind of bleak, but it's still fun. Whereas something like This War of Mine, a game about surviving in a war zone, which is very harrowing, that the hopelessness in that is too close to home for me. Not that I've lived in a war zone, but it's just too real. Whereas a zombie dystopia, not so real. Unless you go to some parts of America. Or Europe, at this point. Or England. To be fair, Warsaw, where I live. It's pretty dire points. But yes, so that's the 3 things I think you should have into that. So now I'm going to go on to talking about a few different zombie board games, because zombies, right? And I'm going to start with Biggie. I'm going to start with the most recent thing I've been playing. So I'm going to talk about the Zombicide here. So Zombicide, Back when I first started kickstarting Kickstarters, I'd heard of Zombicide. And there was a guy who I used to know who kept saying, "Oh, Zombicide's great, so good." And what kind of put me off was it was very arcadey. I've not played Here Comes Negan. I've not really played any of the actual Walking Dead board games, so maybe I should. But yeah, not played those yet. So Zombicide always looked very cartoony and very arcadey, and for me, I was like, well, it's not really got that horror element. It's not got that, you know, the dread in it. And as far as I'm aware, it doesn't have the infection side of things. So it didn't really like kind of tick my boxes really until there was a new Kickstarter coming out, and it's when I first started Kickstarting stuff, so don't blame me for this, but they had a game called Black Plague coming out, and this was Zombicide but set in medieval times. And it was the first time I'd really seen Kickstarter, and it had so many cool looking miniatures out there and so many cool add-ons, and you know, when you tune in every day, you'd see new unlocks, and you'd be like, oh my god, we're unlocking stuff. You know, granted, those things were already planned out well in advance, and they were, just rinsing me for as much money as possible. But hey, there we go. But it was something exciting at the time. I really enjoyed it. So I saw this Zombicide Black Plague, and I was like, this looks really cool. Let's have a go. Nice. Okay, I'll definitely check out Here Comes Negan and see if that ticks the boxes. I'll write that down. Here Comes Negan. Thank you. So I backed Black Plague, and I backed it pretty much all in, to be fair. It's the first all-in kind of Kickstarter I'd gone for. So whilst I was waiting for that to kind of arrive, I was like, let's try the regular Zombicide out and see if I can figure out how to play it. But I picked up Zombicide Season 3, and I couldn't understand how to play the game. It was one of the first times I played a modern board game, and I couldn't quite get to grasp of the rules, especially because like Rube Morgue is like the third season of Zombicide. So I then went out and found out the first season of Zombicide and started playing that, and I learned that and generally enjoyed it. I thought it was a fun little game. There's a few different nuances in there. For instance, the zombies, there's this movement mechanic they have in there, where if you've got one zombie, let's say, or an odd number of zombies who are in one space and they have to move, and they've got two different places they can go, rather than you splitting the group up into two go this way, three go that way, or you know, one zombie, you go, oh, we'll go that way. You actually split them by adding additional zombies to the board. So if you had one zombie going to two different locations, you would just basically add another zombie to the board and they'd both move. Which, for me, I was just like, that really detracts from the whole kind of gameplay for me and immersion, because I'm like, well, why would there be another zombie here? Since that, they have gone over the rule set, over the various different iterations of Zombicide they've done, and they've changed that rule from splitting so it doesn't exist anymore. But yeah, that was something I was always confused at when I was first playing the game. So Zombicide was set like a modern kind of setting. You are essentially trying to get from point A to point B, or you're trying to get objectives, or you're trying to do, you know, something, or save some survivors or whatever. And what's interesting that they do in this game, which I think they do right for zombies, is the zombies themselves are fairly easy to defeat, apart from what they call a abomination. Words escape me then. Abominations come on the board, and you can only destroy them in the base game with a Molotov cocktail, which you basically have to get two different items, like an alcohol, and you have to get like a match or whatever, or a lighter. And then you combine these two things, you throw it in a space, destroy every zombie there. But the rest of the zombies are pretty simple. It's very easy to teach. But what they do right in this is the fact that every zombie you kill, you get experience points for. Experience points enable you to level up your character and get new powers and some really fun kind of mechanics you can add into the game. However, what is interesting is as you level up, the zombie spawn increases. So every round you move your heroes around, then the zombies move and attack, or attack and move, and then you spawn zombies. And there's 4 different color levels. There's blue, yellow, orange, and red. And the blue level, sometimes you spawn stuff, you'll get 1 zombie or 2 zombies, or you'll get no zombies at all. On yellow level, you'll be getting maybe double the amounts. Maybe you'll actually activate all zombies again on the board. So you might have already like moved zombies or attacked with zombies, and then you get a new spawn card out which activates them again. As it goes up in the level, as you can imagine, more and more zombies appear. So the game is really interesting because you do have to kind of like, you want to level up because you want to have these cool abilities. But at the same time, you want to try to even out the leveling up so everyone is at the same level for when these zombies increase. You also have to make sure you're taking out the zombies, because if you don't take them out, more and more come on the board, and when there are no zombies left in hell, no zombies off the board, and you draw a card to spawn some more, then all the zombies of that type activate again. So you suddenly get this zombie rush of them all coming in and taking you out. And I think Zombicide does that really well. The fact that 1 zombie alone is, it's no problem. But when you have a horde of zombies, that's when you really have to worry about it. And they go into some of the later Zombicide games, they actually really lean into the horde mechanic. So the regular Zombicide series, the first season, second season, and third season, really fun little games. The second kind of box was a prison outbreak one, where you've got new kind of tiles and stuff, and new different types of zombies. And then the third season, Rue Morgue, was a team-based mode, which I never played, where basically you could have teams of survivors pitting it against each other, which sounds really cool, but like I say, I never played it. Let's then talk about Black Plague and Green Horde. So finally my Kickstarter arrives, it's Black Plague, and it's just before Christmas, and I'm absolutely amazed at how much stuff is in here. I basically had got the box, and it was a few days before Christmas, and I just left it under the tree, and then just opened up this box for Christmas, and had a great Christmas. Black Plague was really fun because it was a fantasy-themed Zombicide, so it was like a zombie kind of infestation of a fantasy world. You had necromancers now who basically turned up and they tried to move off the board, and if they moved off the board, you'd be adding new spawn points and stuff. There was a lot of really fun kind of themes in there, lovely expansion kind of monsters, some which could walk through walls. You had rats that would like run through walls, and because they could go through like cracks or windows and stuff, there'd be crows coming in. So many different fun things. And yeah, lots of, in the Kickstarter, they unlocked loads of kind of celebrity lookalikes, which was always fun. So they had all the Monty Python crowd, for instance, if you're into that. Or they had a few characters who were like straight from the Marvel universe, but like interpretations. They had Wolverine, for instance, and Storm. They had Batman and the Joker in there. They also had these necromancers that appeared on the board. Were fun because they also had different types of different abilities. And you could have this whole kind of campaign where you would be using all these different necromancers, and if you had all the Kickstarter stuff, you could play a game where essentially if one of your characters died in it, then you wouldn't play with them again for another level. It was just great fun. I really enjoyed Black Plague. They then did Green Horde, which added this new mechanic to it, where basically you would, when you were spawning stuff, you would actually place them onto this tile off the board. So you'd be spawning some monsters in there, and for Green Horde, this was infected orcs as opposed to the humans in the first Black Plague. But yeah, so all these orcs would go on a separate little board, and you would basically spawn them on the board, but also on this board, and then at one point you'd get a kind of spawn card which said Unleash the Horde, or the Horde arrives, or something like that, and then everything that was on this tile to the side you'd place on the board, and you were in trouble because these things would zoom at you. And yeah, it was just really fun. But yeah, Green Horde was great. They added bushes in there as well, so you didn't have line of sight on the other side of the bush, so sometimes you could go through and find zombies. They also had different raised levels, so you could kind of climb up onto a ledge, and the zombies were like stuck there, and you could like pick them off from there. They added dragons to it, giants, loads of really fun different kind of characters that you'd expect to see in fantasy worlds. And yeah, if I was to recommend any kind of Zombicide to start with, I'd say they were really fun. But yeah, it's one of those problems with Simon games where basically there's so many things you can, and if you're a collector, you are going to be pretty poor. I remember I sold off all of my Black Plague stuff and my Green Horde stuff and got a ton of money for it. And I wasn't even being crazy with it. I put stuff on eBay and it just pretty went because it's out of print. So yeah. So if you are a collector and you want to play those, unless they do reprints of them, then you're going to be looking at a substantial pound or dollar figure attached to that acquisition. So let's now talk about Night of the Living Dead. Night of the Living Dead Zombicide is a great game. I absolutely love this. Night of the Living Dead is one of my favourite films. I really enjoyed watching this as a kid, and you can watch it now for free, I believe, because yeah, it went into like Creative Commons or whatever. So you can go on YouTube and watch the entire thing, I believe. But Night of the Living Dead, the Zombicide game. I mean, in the film, they all die. No spoilers, but spoilers. It's a very old film, so if you haven't seen it, that's on you. And yeah, it's pretty much. I was like, well, how are you gonna make a board game out of this? Because you've only got basically a farmhouse. But they do a great job at doing a what if kind of mode. So they take elements from the film, they take the characters from the film, and then they add a little twist to it. So Zombicide is known for being, you're playing these kind of regular heroes who have special abilities and pretty strong and stuff. But in Night of the Living Dead, these are just regular people who are very weak and flawed kind of characters. And they did a great mechanic in it where basically you start off as these kind of uninspired, regular kind of people, and then at some point you can switch to being this kind of like Ramiro mode. Is it Ramiro mode, I think they call it? Or Zombicide mode? I can't remember. But essentially, become a powered up version of that character. And you even switch out your miniature, which if you're a painter, you could have done a great job of making all of the regular kind of versions of yourself, black and white, like the film, and then maybe done a colorized version for your super version, maybe. But yeah, it was a great game. You only play it in Ramiro mode, much harder and more fun. Is that where you only play as the regular characters? Let me know. But yeah, so they did I think that's 4 scenarios to begin with, which lead up to the events of the film. And then after that, it's like a whole what if thing. What if they'd survived? And then the rest of it just goes off into this interesting kind of, well, I found an interesting kind of narrative. The problem with the game is there are 2 levels in it where you are traveling and they are broken. I believe you can probably fix these, but the problem with it, the mechanics for this is you basically have to get to one tile. But to get to that tile, you've got to go through a bunch of other tiles. So you get a tile of 9. I'd love to see those pictures of your minis painted in black and white. Yeah, that'd be great. So your tile's got like 9 squares on it. And the start of the game, there are no zombies on these tiles, okay? So as soon as you move off a tile, you draw a new tile out, and yeah, you carry on. Whenever you're off a tile, where there's nobody on a tile, you take that tile off and it's out of the game. Now the problem is the zombies don't spawn until after you've moved. So basically you can go from one tile, move on to the next one. I think you spawn a couple of zombies when you first go on there, but you essentially can just run past them. Now, maybe that's not in the spirit of what they were attempting to do. Like if you try to fight the zombies as you go through each of these things, then yeah, you could obviously do that level and it'd take a little bit longer. But for me, it didn't make any sense. I was like, well, why am I gonna, the point of this level is to get to the car, or it's to travel to this particular place. Why am I gonna search for items? Because I don't get to keep them between scenarios. I'm just going to try and get my guys to the other side. So there are 2 travel levels in there, which I don't feel work at all. I don't feel they were especially well play tested. And yeah, that's the only bad thing about this particular game in my mind, the travel levels. Everything else is fantastic. The very last scenario in there is really tricky, really fun. I absolutely love Night of the Living Dead Zombicide, and I think it's fairly cheap these days as well. Highly recommend it if you are after a Zombicide game. That's a great place to start. And if you're a fan of Night of the Living Dead, fantastic game. Yeah, apart from said travel levels. Yeah, so there's that. Then let's talk about second edition Zombicide. I've never played it, so I can't really comment on it. We're now going to talk about Marvel Zombies and X-Men Resistance before I talk about my favourite Zombicide. So, Marvel Zombies came out a long time ago. The kind of comic books, and essentially, yeah, it's what would happen if there was a zombie virus in the Marvel universe, and essentially all these heroes get infected, but they've still got their superpowers, and they're still kind of heroes, but they have this insatiable hunger, and they're in this whole mindset. Well, if I can just kind of like calm that hunger down a little bit, then I can focus and try to do what's right. Yeah, it doesn't kind of work out well. It's a great series of comic books, and they made a zombie side out of it. If you went through the Kickstarter, you would have got, probably, if you paid that much money, you would have got this huge Galactus miniature. I didn't go through the Kickstarter because I was like, at that point, very jaded with any CMON projects with the amount of minis. I was like, I'm never going to play with all that stuff. But yeah, it looks really cool. And anyway, recently they had the Marvel zombie stuff fairly cheap compared to what it normally is. So yeah, I was like, let's dip my toe in this. So with the Marvel zombies, what's really interesting about this particular core box is you're playing the zombies this time. You're zombified heroes, and there's this whole hunger mechanic where basically every round you start by increasing your hunger by 1. And hunger's good because the higher your hunger level is, the more dice you're rolling when you're attacking. So it actually makes you more effective at fighting. The problem is, when your hunger level goes up to the maximum, you suddenly lose all consciousness of your like conscious thought. You can only move and or try to devour people. Whenever you devour somebody, it's a weak attack, and you basically will reduce your hunger to 0, and then you can think again. But it obviously leaves you weak because if there are lots of enemies around, you then are rolling less dice to attack them. And every time you attack, if you get the teeth on the dice, so the one result of the dice, you have to increase your hunger. So you could be fighting and doing pretty well, but then suddenly your hunger gets to the maximum, and then you just become this like zombified version of yourself. Really enjoyed that mechanic in the Marvel Zombies game, and it's really interesting going up against heroes. The fact you can devour characters to then add special abilities to yourself. Really fun, really well thought out, and enjoyable. X-Men Resistance is another core box using the same mechanics, except slightly different. This time around in X-Men Resistance, you're playing the heroes and you're fighting zombies, whereas in the zombies one, you're fighting shield agents and superheroes. Now, what's interesting is you can actually combine both. You can play as, like, they give you all the stuff from in both sets, so you can play hero versions or zombie versions of the characters. So you do get like a bit of kind of like cohesion there. However, the Marvel Zombies one I much prefer because of this hunger mechanic, whereas the X-Men I much prefer the characters in it and some of the abilities, but they've got a power mechanic in it where you basically increase your power, and then you can decrease your power to use your abilities to add dice to your attacks or use special abilities. And yeah, whenever you roll the teeth symbol on the dice, nothing happens, which seems weird because I don't know why are they on those dice. I would have thought they could have done something like maybe like if a zombie in zone they attack you, or maybe you lose a power. I don't know, something to do with that teeth symbol. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense why they've got in the game. Other than they're like, well, you know, we've got a bunch of these dice to shift. Let's just add them to this game. But yeah, they've got the narrative for the X-Men one. I'm not quite sure on as well because it kind of like sticks around the X-Mansion, but there's not really any point for them to sticking around. And they're like, oh, we're going to exit through this bit, and then you go to the next scenario. They're like, oh, they're still at the X-Mansion. Why? Whereas, you know, the Marvel Zombies, the narrative there, they're in New York and they're eating everything. That makes sense. So out of the two of them, I do prefer the mechanics of Marvel Zombies, but I do prefer the characters of the X-Men because they're pretty cool. But anyway, both quite enjoyable games, and at the price that the Marvel Zombies one is at the moment, a good kind of price range to dip in. Next, I'm going to talk about my favourite Zombicide, but just after I mention this one last Zombicide, because I'd written it down, but I clearly walked past it in my my little looking down this notepad here. Marvel Zombies was great, but I think it's not as good as Zombicide Undead or Alive. It's a Western version, and it's just using the regular Zombicide 2nd edition rules, I assume, and just changed it for you in the Wild West. As a big fan of Shadows of Brimstone, I'm always a fan of anything which is kind of Wild West horror themed. And yeah, the Undead or Alive, not much to talk about really, other than you've got kind of civilian characters, and then you've got like more kind of, I don't know, more heroic characters. There's different classes in it essentially. There's like priests, so you can basically use holy water to attack the undead. You've got kind of gunslingers, and you've got regular civilians who can search locations twice. So yeah, so Undead or Alive, not much to say about it really, other than it's a pretty cool game. I covered a couple of videos on the channel, so check those out if you want to, or don't if you don't. But yeah, not much to say about it. It was fine. It was a good version. Some interesting mechanics, but nothing massively interesting to write home about. Finally, let's talk about the one that I really enjoyed. And technically, I don't really feel like this should be a zombie game because it's aliens. So this is Zombicide Invader, which I'm so gutted they didn't call Xenocide, because they call all the zombies in this Xenos. So Xenocide would have been really simple. Essentially, the plot is there's this planet and there's all these docile kind of aliens on there, but then they're infected with something, and then they all turn evil and start attacking. What you have is a fantastic sci-fi zombie game where you are trying to kind of rescue people, trying to escape the planet. It's so much fun. There are robots you can control. There's a whole mechanic for being inside and what weapons you use inside. Going outside, you can't use ballistic weapons. You also have to get oxygen to go outside as well. It's really fun. The miniatures look great. Apart from like the Abomination looks a little goofy, I think. But there's this whole mechanic about spreading spores all around the place. It is a fantastic title. I highly recommend anyone who likes sci-fi horror to check out Zombicide Invader. I had a fantastic time playing for the channel. I covered Zombicide Invader and the Black Ops expansion. Never got to the other big core box thing because it was very pricey at the time, and I don't earn enough money off this channel to buy tons of games. I get a little bit now and again, which I can obviously put into games, but yeah, so couldn't afford it. Now I feel like I spent most of the time talking about Zombicide games, and I've got a load of other zombie games to talk about. Clearly, I didn't have enough time to talk about this stuff. So let's cover off a couple from my little list here. Stalingrad Z. Or Z, depending where you come from. I've spoken about it several times. This is a fantastic solo game you can play where you are in Stalingrad. It is an absolute nightmare. I mean, the actual Stalingrad itself, from the sounds of it, was absolutely like hell on earth. This time you actually have zombies in there. So you are either a Russian or a German who's basically survived a bombing, and you're trying to escape. There's 22 levels. There's a bit of choose your own adventure about which route you go down. It is bleak, harrowing. The zombies are difficult to fight. It's very rules heavy, so there is that. But as they've done more of these kind of games using this, using the kind of basic mechanics for this, and as the later games have come out, the kind of mechanics have been a bit more refined. And I feel like that's in my brain. Stalingrad Z has definitely got the potential to have a version 2.0. They did a Project Reese, I think it's called, which essentially sounds like the film Outpost, which I cannot wait to play because that looks so much fun. And Overlord, not Outpost. Overlord is one of my favourite World War II horror. It's so cool. Not long left on my chat here, so I need to rattle through these. So before I had Zombicide, I had Zpocalypse. Zpocalypse is more of what I was expecting from a zombie survival game. You are having survivors, all have their own different kind of abilities and stuff, and you're just trying to survive a certain amount of days. You go, in the daytime, you go out looting, you got like little kind of like jigsaw pieces for a board, and you're moving around, you're trying to survive. It's great fun. It's so much fun. They did a sequel called Zpocalypse 2, which I have. I have never properly played it. I've played maybe the tutorial, but that one sounds so much better. There's so much more about getting more survivors, and you're trying to last a certain amount of days. It just looks so cool, but like I say, I've not really got into the meat and potatoes of it, which is a shame. I should do that. Resident Evil. So there's several Resident Evil board games out there. Resident Evil board games I'm going to talk about quickly now are Steamforged Games versions. So starting with Resident Evil 2. Why they didn't start with 1, I don't know, but we're glad they did it this way. Resident Evil 2, really fun little zombie campaign. You are playing as either, a couple of different characters from there, but you're going to be picking Leon, and you're going to be picking Claire. I mean, why wouldn't you? Or Ada, maybe. and you are going through several different scenarios and trying to survive. It's fun, it's simple, and the only issue I have with it is they assume anyone playing this game has played the video game, so they don't really have much in the form of narrative. They're like, you have to get to this person, but they don't even explain who it is, which kind of, it's a bit of a shame. But overall, it's a pretty fun game, and what I like about it is the fact they've done a whole thing with it. The zombies in it are very tricky because you can spend a ton of ammunition to try to take these things out, but the best strategy in that game is just to run past the zombies, which is essentially what you do in Resident Evil, the video games, unless you're in a boss battle. But yeah, most of the time you're just trying to run past stuff so you can get on to the next level. I covered all Resident Evil 2 on the channel, so go watch that. It was fun to play, and I enjoyed doing it for you guys. Resident Evil 3 was the next game they did, and this time around they had like a overworld resource management side of things. So you had different locations in the city, and you start off with like 3 of them unlocked. You choose which level to go to. When you go to that level, you can get special items which will unlock other levels. And you're trying to basically go through enough levels to get enough kind of parts to work a cable car to get out of there. All the while you're being stalked by the aforementioned Nemesis, this big kind of guy who turns up, and his whole quest is to try to kill any STARS members. And yeah, that's fun. It's got some really cool moments in it. I enjoyed it profusely and covered all that on the channel, although I did not win the final boss battle, so there we go. Fast forward, and the last game they did, so far they are doing Resident Evil 4. The last one they did is Resident Evil, the original, and this time around they got it right. It is fantastic. I absolutely love Resident Evil 1. They have got the exploring the mansion right. They've got this whole kind of keeping your resources. The whole resource management is really important in it. But this time around, rather than running all the way through the kind of level to try to get out, you are going to screw yourself over if you don't dispose of the bodies, because these bodies will get back up, and you will get advanced enemies to fight as the game goes on. So you really do have to try to... It's very strategic, which you wouldn't think it would be for a board game based on a video game, but the Resident Evil 1 board game is a fantastic adaptation. And I did the first couple on the channel, but then I lost some of the footage and I need to go back to it. So maybe I'll start again, but with the Resident Evil Director's Cut, which has got a bunch more expansion bits for it, and they've got Wesker in there, so that's always cool. But yeah, highly recommend the first Resident Evil board game. Resident Evil is so cool. Highly recommend that. Right, I've already spoke about Dead of Winter. Dead of Winter is probably the best zombie Walking Dead themed board game. I've not played the Walking Dead board game, so I can't really say that, but from what I played, it's got a great theme. Very easy to play, and you know, if you get the rules right, I did not get the rules right last time I played that, but yeah, really fun game. Highly recommend that one. Dawn of the Zeds is a really fun one as well, where you're essentially it's a kind of tower defense game. So you've got your little town in the middle, and you've got these little kind of lanes that go off to different areas of this kind of area that you're in. And every round you're going to be spawning zombies on these different tracks, which are going to slowly move in, take over the villages on the way, and then come through to try and destroy you. It is such a cool game, and it's one of those games which has so much in it that they do different kind of like difficulty levels. So you start on the very easy one to begin with, and you won't need to worry about managing your food resources or things like that. But as you go through, they add extra kind of different elements to it. And what's really cool is all the cards and rules are color coded, so you know, oh, well, I'm playing, you know, at red level, I need to include green, yellow, and red cards in this. Or if I'm just playing yellow, just green and yellow, for instance. A ton of little expansions for it. It's such a cool game. Dawn of the Zed's 3rd edition, hard to come by. I think they'll definitely do a 4th edition, because that game is just a fun little zombie sim. I used to own it, but I didn't hit the table enough, and yeah, I wish I had a group that would like to play that game, because it's definitely one which is, you need more than one person to play. You can play it solo, but it's just not the same. Let's finally talk about something that isn't a board game, but it is a role-playing game. So there is a game called Zombie World. It is a kind of role-playing game where you are basically a character in a dystopian, like kind of zombie apocalypse kind of place, and you are trying to survive. This game is played with cards. It's I really want to do it on the channel. I've owned this game for absolutely ages, and I think it would work really well on the channel. But you basically you draw these cards out, and it tells you what your history is, what your background is, and what your secret agenda is. And then the person who's game master will basically, narrate kind of what's happening, and the game just goes on from there. It's a very rules light role playing game. Anyone can pick up. Really fun. Highly recommend checking out the Zombie World if you're into something which isn't as a traditional board game, but more kind of cross between a board game and a role playing game. But yeah, that's about it for zombies, guys. I mean, I could keep talking about them. I was speaking to my friend Em. She was saying, is there a zombie Cluedo out there where you basically, you have to figure out where they died, and the zombie's chasing you whilst you're trying to do that, which I think sounds hilarious. Trying to solve someone's murder before they eat you. So yeah, maybe that's something somebody could develop. That'd be pretty fun. But anyway, that's it from me. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day today, and yeah, that's it for my Wednesday waffle. Really, I don't know what more to say. We should be having, I think there's an unboxing coming out on Friday. We've got a ton of videos that still need to be edited. We've got Dungeon Saga, we've got an Age Contrived. We're going to be getting back together with Will to do some Slay the Spire. And ISS Vanguard, we filmed one. The audio did not pick up from the app, so we're going to go back to it. If there's any games you'd love to see us cover on the channel, let me know in the comments below. And I'm still on my quest to reduce this collection from this to 100 games. So going forward, we will be doing, I'll be doing some more videos on how I'm getting my collection down. And the first part of this is actually writing a list of all the games I own and then just picking 100 that I want to keep. I mean, that's the easiest way to do it, right? Anyway, thanks for listening to me to waffle for like nearly 57 minutes here, guys. If you made it this full way, congratulations. And now I'm going to do the thing that I always do, which is awkwardly try and turn this off. You get my finger over the lens there, which is hilarious. I've been Yerrick excited about it. Until next time, guys, stay safe or die rolling. And I can't turn it off.